Hey friends! How is everybody doing? I am here in the rainbow room today, which I've decided to call my library/craft room because I mean all these great rainbows, you know. So here I am. I actually have, you know, it's funny. I actually have some upcoming projects that will make this even more of a rainbow room. So stay tuned for that. But I just haven't started on those yet because they will take time. But I'm really excited. Anyway, so hi, welcome to Regency, love. Just putting on my lip balm, sorry. And I feel like I've been taking so long to get through the Mr. Graham storyline, but it's not that I've been taking longer to get through his storyline, it's just that I've been like skipping weeks. I skipped 2 weeks, I think, because I was sick and because I was away. So here we are. And I don't know, I'm going to try, can speak. I'm going to try to get as much done of this as possible. So, let's see where I'm at. All right, hold on. Okay. A ball in town. Colonel Watson is hosting another ball at the assembly rooms to which both you and Mama have been invited. Ooh. And we have a mysterious man. Okay. As Mr. Graham begins to approach you, you notice he is in the company of another gentleman. Oh, with whom you are not yet acquainted. Ah, Miss Sharp, you are looking splendid tonight. Oh, thank you. Let's see. You're not looking bad yourself, Mr. Graham. He is such a cutie. I am a big fan of him. It pleases me greatly to introduce you to Lord Sutton, who has been a dear friend for many years, and whom I hold in the highest esteem. Oh, hello, Miss Sharp. Lord Sutton. What am I going to say to you? Graham, I must say I am most disappointed in the company you have been keeping. Perhaps it is time to consider options outside of Darlington. Excuse me? Whoa, okay, hold on. My lighting is really bad. Jeez. The sunlight is nuts. Here we go. I'll just sit kind of sideways like this. Look, you can see my trusty ring light. Alright, let's keep going. Wow, let's see. Jesus. Okay, pardon me, Lord Sutton, but I do not appreciate being spoken about so rudely while I am still present. Is it rudeness if one is speaking the truth? Jeez, what a jerk! Sutton, may I have a word with you in private? Do excuse us, Miss Sharp. I'm sorry to have troubled you this evening. You are still looking quite splendid. Mr. Graham and Lord Sutton walk away from earshot, but you can see from his demeanor that the former is quite unhappy with the latter's behavior. I am too. That was a jerk thing to say. With how many things are we upon the brink of becoming acquainted if cowardice or blank did not restrain our inquiries? I have absolutely no idea. Yes, I do. I had a guess and I was correct. Okay. Awesome. Okay, let's see. Man, I'm doing amazing on points this round. Let's see. No, I don't want to have tea with you. Huh. My gosh. There's so much going on. To be in mourning replies... Actually, all of those, right? No? Oh, I must have missed one. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. Wow, there's so much to choose from. Let's just, like, start at the top. I know we've already hung out with her a lot, so let's just, like, get through this. Harden your countenance, girl. Oh, she's so cute. Let's not talk about her brother at all. Oh my goodness. I don't know how to, like, not show interest. Okay, there we go. Give me the points. Oh, I remember what this is. Okay, friendship. Oh my gosh. Okay. Get to work, girl. There we go. A leisurely stroll. You are walking by Lambton Hall when you see Mr. Graham playing leapfrog with the schoolboys. Oh, that's so cute. Let's observe them silently. Mr. Graham, Colin, and Peter seem to be having a brilliant time. When it is Mr. Graham's turn, Peter turns to him with a very serious expression. Mr. Graham, please don't make a mistake, else Colin and I will end up being flattened. Don't be silly, Peter. Mr. Graham is an expert, and he never makes any mistakes. There is no one in the world who doesn't make a mistake every now and then. No one but you and Mr. Graham. Boys, I need to concentrate on this. Otherwise, Mr. Graham makes the leap and pretends to falter, thereby dragging all three of them to the ground in a laughing heap. Mr. Graham, I should have listened to Peter. For a moment, I thought we'd be flat as pancakes. Well, boys, how about we try that one again? The three leapfroggers rise, eager to begin again. Mr. Graham notices your presence and waves to you with a sheepish smile. Smile back and leave the boys to their game. Long after you've left Mr. Graham and the boys to it, you still hear their resounding laughter. That is so freaking sweet! Here we go. Oh my gosh. He is such marriage material! Sisters and friends, you and Mary take Lettuce out for a day in town. Yes, I'm calling her Lettuce, by the way. She is Lettuce. Lettuce. On your way into town with Mary and Lettuce, the younger Miss Earlwood trips and injures her knee. Oh, poor baby. As Lettuce starts to cry, you see Mr. Graham, who seems to have just left town. He approaches you with a great deal of concern. Let's take a look at that, Lettuce. Mary gives Mr. Graham a quick nod of greeting, then pulls up Lettuce's petticoats, revealing a rather nasty scrape. Oh, poor baby. Oh, my poor Lettuce. Be brave. We will have it fixed in no time. Mary looks for a clean handkerchief, but you can't find one that hasn't been used. You are not carrying one either. Mr. Graham, would you happen to have something to cover Lettuce's scrape for now? Yes, actually. He gives Mary his own handkerchief, which has been neatly folded. With a word of thanks, Mary tends to Lettuce's knee. Let's hold her hand. Lettuce squeezes your hand tightly in response. Mary makes a quick work of the temporary dressing, and soon Lettuce's knee has been cleaned and bandaged. The girl seems to feel a little better and slowly stands up. While Lettuce tries to walk, you notice that Mr. Graham has walked off a little, then returns with a flower. Miss Lettuce, you have been a very brave girl and deserve a flower. Thank you, Mr. Graham, but I wonder why you thought I might like flowers. Well, I just thought all little girls like flowers. I do like them, but I like beetles better. Oh, I see. Do not fret, Mr. Graham. Lettuce can be a little eccentric at times. I much prefer flowers. I see. And I, like Mary, am also very fond of flowers. You were not entirely wrong in your assumptions, Mr. Graham. Actually, nothing is better than a generous serving of cake, or perhaps the entire concoction. Yes. I must agree with Lettuce, though ladybirds are just such lovely little creatures. Now, flowers are the best. I see. Well, is there any other way I can offer my assistance? Perhaps I could help see Miss Lettuce home? No, thank you, Mr. Graham. Mary and Elizabeth can help me home. We'll just walk very, very slowly. Yes, we will. Thank you, Mr. Graham, and I'm sorry we've inconvenienced you. Not at all. I'm simply relieved Miss Lettuce is not too badly hurt. I hope you have a good day, ladies. And you, Mr. Graham. Thank you for the flower. You, Mary, and Lettuce head back towards Dunstan House. The walk is a little slow, but Lettuce appears to be in better spirits, despite her unexpected tumble. That was sweet, too. Oh my gosh. Okay, Mrs. Norris calls on you and Mama to share the latest news about an unfamiliar face in town. I gotta get ready for this one. Okay. Ah, Mrs. Norris, I hope you have been keeping well. The weather has been dreadful lately. It would be most regrettable if you caught a chill. Thank you, Mrs. Sharp. You are far too kind, dear. Though you really ought not to have bothered, for I seem to possess quite an enviable constitution, and have been managing fine. Unlike some poor souls, and of course I am speaking of Mr. Digby, the poor lad who has been taken quite ill Wednesday last, and could hardly arise from bed to greet me when I called on him Friday last, or was it on the Saturday? It might have been on the Saturday. Though certainly not on the Sunday, for even Mr. Digby's poor health cannot take precedence over the morning Eucharist, though I did think the sermon left a lot to be desired, and I did wonder once or twice if I might have done a better job. Now, before you show your disapproval, let me remind you that having such thoughts is not at all blasphemous. For I had not intended any ill will towards our dear pastor, or worse, harbored any misgivings about the Lord himself or his servants. After all, I am one of his servants also. And I simply wish to help spread the good word, and believe I am quite capable of doing so. Because I have been told several times, especially by my Mr. Norris, the poor departed soul, that I have quite a talent with words and expressing myself to others. That was one sentence. Of course, Mrs. Norris, it is indeed good to see you in such high spirits. Oh my goodness. Let's sip our tea and listen. It is always lovely to have you here and to hear you speak, Mrs. Norris, but if I may, I do have some news to share in regards to a certain visitor to Darlington, Miss Peregrine, if I remember correctly. If I remember correctly, her name is Miss Peregrine. Ah, yes, Miss Peregrine. Peregrine. Yes, I was correct. Yes, indeed, that was the very reason I came to call in the first place, Mrs. Sharp, for I thought you might like to know, though it seems word has already reached you, so perhaps there is no need for me to say much more. Mamma looks a little torn for a moment, as if she is making a decision that greatly pains her. Eventually she gathers her resolve and puts back a smile. Oh, do not say that, Mrs. Norris. You know very well my knowledge about any news concerning Darlington is much inferior to yours. I have only heard a little bit about Miss Peregrine, but I do not doubt you know her entire story. Well, yes, you're quite right, Mrs. Sharp. Though it is rather kind of you to have such faith in me and my wealth of knowledge, and can rather assure you that it is not at all misplaced, and I do know quite a bit about her. Yes, but not in a prying or intrusive manner, you see. Oh, no, not at all, because it would be most disagreeable to spend so much of one's time inquiring about other people's business. And I'm afraid I sense you are currently attempting to extract the very information from me, Mrs. Sharp, and it quite saddens me you are being so utterly indiscreet about it. And in front of your daughter. No less, who, with such a young and impressionable mind, will surely take on these most displeasing habits. Oh, how you wrong me, Mrs. Norris. I simply ask because I wish to welcome Miss Peregrine to Darlington, and I do not know what type of gift she would find pleasing. If that were the case, you should have spoken earlier and made your honorable intentions known sooner. Dear Mrs. Sharp, much of our current troubles can be easily dispelled with a proper communication, you know. It is so easy to speak the truth. I don't understand why not enough people partake in it, which is quite the shame. For I might have been given the wrong impression as I had just then, and those impressions are very difficult to change if one does not indicate otherwise. But oh, we were talking of Miss Peregrine, and yes, I think it's quite a lovely idea to send her a gift to welcome her, but I'm afraid she is only passing by for a few days, perhaps to visit a distant relation, though I've not yet determined precisely who that might be, or perhaps to take in some country air, though that is not particularly likely when she is surrounded by plenty of country air in her father's estate in Berkshire, and plenty of sea air too, come to think of it, for the family owns quite an impressive manor in Bath, though we should not be so easily impressed by mere mortal creations, inferior and flawed as they are to the great lords, and I suppose one of the few vices Miss Peregrine possesses is being preoccupied with those very same objects and trinkets that take us away from the lifelong devotion to God, which is rather a shame, if you ask me, because she has so many prospects, more so than poor Miss Sharp, I am sorry to say, but it is only the truth, and I do not speak anything less than that, as you all very well know, and it would be rather a shame if such good breeding took a little tumble and sours into ill breeding, though I sincerely hope that that will not be the case with Miss Peregrine, but lately I have often wondered why she is spending time in Darlington, though when I think on it, perhaps she is on a charitable excursion to visit some of the less fortunate and to share her good graces with them, which would be a very respectful and Christian thing to do, and quite admirable too. I'm sure Mr. Digby would agree with me most ardently, and oh, how splendid it would be if Miss Peregrine Margwyn took a particular liking to Mr. Digby, and then she decided to settle in Darlington, and then we would have such a lovely and well-bred addition to our town, and Mr. Digby would have a suitable wife to dote on him when he is taken ill, but poor dear, living alone as he has the past few years after his mother's passing. But on that note, I remember... Oh my gosh. The clock strikes the hour, and Mama gasps rather than loudly, taking Mrs. Norris and perhaps yourself just a little by surprise. Oh, Mrs. Norris, I am so sorry to interrupt you, but the time has passed so quickly. I am calling on Mrs. Earlwood today, and our agreed time is drawing near. It would be most impolite if I were late. Say no more, Mrs. Sharp. I thoroughly understand your plight, though I must say you should be a little more careful with the time in the future. Those were one sentence. Okay. For it is rather unwise for a woman of your age to be so forgetful about her appointments and to lose track of time as you so evidently have. And oh, how I wish to say a lot more on the matter, but I do think I shall do so, but a little, once again, interrupting Mrs. Norris. And I wish to hear much more, but not on this occasion, I'm afraid. Thank you so much for calling, Mrs. Norris, but Elizabeth will show you out now. Happily obey, Mama. Bye-bye. Yes, now that's a good girl, despite all my faults, Mrs. Norris, and I confess that I have many. Why, having raised my daughter as I have done is not one of them. Thank you. You arrive at the door and bid Mrs. Norris farewell. Thank you kindly, dear. You are a very sweet child, as I'd always known you'd be ever since you were in the cradle. Oh, your Mama and Papa were so proud of you and so very grateful when you survived childhood. Jesus. And it is such a shame. The same can be said for your poor little brothers and sisters. Oh my gosh, but I suppose that's all in the dear Lord's hands. And we have no say about our fates any more than we have say in tomorrow's weather. But I do recall that the joy that washed through this household when your brother Christopher also survived childhood. And your Mama and Papa never said a word, but it didn't need saying, for their heir had survived, and when you also were not taken by illness, it was so delightful to see Christopher and you playing together as children. Huh. Though I don't suppose you've seen him at all since his abominable behavior years ago, which must have been such a strain on your parents, and especially your poor Papa's health, but I wish your brother no ill. And hope he is well. And come to think of it, I do hope poor Mr. Digby is feeling a little better, as he was in such a dreadful state when I saw him last, and oh, I do think he would very much benefit from a visit from you. Miss Sharp, if you would so kindly oblige, it'll surely brighten his day and lift his spirits to see a kind, familiar face such as yours. Close the door without a word. You hear a sound resembling polite mortification through the door, followed by a quick shuffling of feet away from your house. When you return inside, you find Mama humming a cheerful tune as she settles down to mend a hat. It appears she has not promised to call on Mrs. Earlwood after all. Oh, that was so good. Man, I was like running out of breath there. An unexpected present. You return from a walk and find a mysterious present for you. Ooh, what could that be? Oops, no. You return home from your walk to find a parcel on your doorstep. No one else in the household seems to have noticed, so it must have been left quite recently. You pick up the package and see it is simply addressed in your name. However, you cannot find any indication of who had left it. Let's open it. You gingerly unwrap your mystery gift to find a bouquet of wildflowers inside. They appear to be freshly picked. Aww. Smiling, you take your gift inside and look for a vase for your flowers. That's so sweet. Going to one wedding brings on another. There we go. Oh, Lord Fat Cat's the best. You have been out for a walk. Upon returning home, you're greeted by a familiar figure. Upon returning home, you are surprised to find Lord Fat Cat awaiting you in your drawing room. Beside him is a cloth doll with its arm falling off. Oh no! Lord Fat Cat nods gravely. Wait, what did I say? Oh dear, that poor doll seems to be in an unhappy state. Lord Fat Cat nods gravely. The doll was involved in a horrible accident, which was witnessed by the doll's best friend, a baker's little girl. Sad. Lord Fat Cat nudges the doll towards you, then tilts his head in the direction where you keep your sewing kit. You don't need to ask twice, it'll be good as new in no time. Lord Fat Cat purrs happily. He knew he had not misjudged your skills in needlework. You make quick but careful work of the job and even reinforce some of the older stitches. Once you have sewn the arm back on, Lord Fat Cat gives you a nod of uttermost approval, and bounds off with the doll. He is indeed a champion of the little people. It's freaking sweet. Oh my gosh. Oops. Hi, kitty. You want to come up on my lap? Come on. Oh, Salem. There we go. Kitty hug. An evening at Birkenbridge. You and Mary have both been invited to dine at Birkenbridge. You are conversing with Mary when Mr. Graham approaches you. Miss Sharp, Miss Earlwood, you seem to be involved in such a lively conversation that I hope you won't mind if I join you. Of course not, Mr. Graham. It would be lovely to hear your input. Oh, what is the subject? I will endeavor to give you my honest and humble opinion. Excellent, but first we must ask you if you are acquainted with Miss Peregrine. We've heard she is here to visit some relations, though we've been unable to find out exactly who they are. No, I'm afraid I have no previous acquaintance with Miss Peregrine, though I too have heard some talk about her. But I am able to shed some light for you. I am quite certain the relation in question was one of the men in the regiment, a cousin of sorts through marriage, I think. That would explain why we've not seen her before. You, sir, are quite indispensable. Oh, he's blushing. Flattered as I am, I do protest to such an exaggeration. Oh. It is no exaggeration, Mr. Graham, though, unlike Mary, I believe you are indispensable in other ways than being our reluctant informant. This time, Mr. Graham's blush extends to cover his entire face as he glances down in a mixture of embarrassment and pleasure. Oh, he's so cute! Mr. Graham, do you happen to know anything else about Mrs. Peregrine? No, Miss Peregrine. I hear she is from a rather distinguished family and owns more gowns for this season than our entire wardrobes combined. Salem is blending in with my shirt. Get a black cap. He'll go with all your wardrobe. Miss Earlwood, I am afraid my usefulness in this matter has expired. I do not know anything more about her or her situation. Oh, that is rather a shame. How I would love to be introduced. Might I ask why you'd like such a thing? For the same reason you'd like to be introduced to another reputable high-ranking officer, or a well-endowed gentleman of great repute such as your Lord Sutton. That's an interesting man. I'm not quite sure I comprehend, Miss Earlwood. I would hold no objections about meeting other gentlemen of any position or situation, but one Lord Sutton is quite certainly quite enough for me. LOL. But do you not seek more connections? Perhaps you could use some to your advantage. I'm afraid that is a point on which we must disagree, Miss Earlwood. Some people might find it important to form as many favorable connections as possible, but I believe in making my own way. A noble venture, indeed, but that is perhaps also a gentleman's privilege. Oh, are you perhaps referring to how the role of matrimony might shape our respective situations? Yes, indeed. I know it is my duty to secure a respectable marriage, and having 2 younger sisters and no brothers renders my task even more crucial. I cannot imagine how difficult it would be for a family with 4 or 5 girls. Please forgive me if I'm being too forward, but am I to understand that you are willing to sacrifice your happiness and enter into matrimony with someone who has the means, but for whom you feel no real affection? I'm sure there will be some level of affection, to be sure, but his reputation and assets are of great importance. I understand your reasons behind this, but I am afraid I cannot imagine it for myself. How will you be truly happy? Mr. Graham, having a secure marriage is the very same as being truly happy. How else would I be able to hold balls and dance in splendid gowns, both of which bring me so much joy? Wow. Okay. Your eyes have brightened at the mere prospect. I no longer doubt your words. We all find joy in different things. I'm quite sure you and Lord Sutton do not share any affinity for the very same things. Quite right, Miss Sharp. You have been rather... quite right. Miss Sharp, you have been rather quiet. If you don't mind, I would be interested in knowing your general thoughts on matrimony. I do not care so much for balls and gowns as Mary, and I seek a much simpler life, quiet afternoons with a good book, some embroidery, and the company of a caring husband. Mr. Graham pauses for a while, then clears his throat. That's rather a shame. I was rather hoping to put my name on your dance card at the next ball. Was that a bad option? Honestly, though, that's how I feel. If I may return to our original topic, I just wish to say that I would very much like to form an acquaintance with Miss Peregrine. It's really quite a shame you do not know her, Mr. Graham. Wow, my face is such a rainbow right now. It's beautiful. I love it. Love it. My apologies, Miss Earlwood. I am but a humble man minding his own business. Well, for the most part. So says Mr. Graham after he has joined conversations uninvited. I hope you're not always this capricious, sir. Only when I am exceptionally pleased with the world, which, as of late, has been quite often. I wonder why. Then, let us hope you will continue to remain so pleased, for I am quite fond of a bright and capricious Mr. Graham. You are much too kind to say so, Miss Earlwood. May you also continue to be so full of boundless energy. And may we all continue to be full of happiness and good health. Mr. Graham beams at you and raises his glass. Yes, let us drink to that. What an interesting conversation. Oops, my bad. I did not read the question. Taking some fresh air. You are strolling along with Mary and Phoebe when you spot Mr. Graham in the distance. He seems to have noticed you, too, and is heading your way. To you and Phoebe, before Mr. Graham has arrived. Well, it seems Elizabeth's favorite redcoat is here. Perhaps he'd heard news of our walk and has followed us here. Before you have the chance to reply, Mr. Graham has become within earshot. Miss Earlwood, Miss Ingram, Miss Sharp, it is such a pleasure to see you all today. The pleasure is ours, Mr. Graham, though I'm afraid you've joined us at quite an inopportune moment of discussion. Oh, dare I ask what the topic is? The latest fashions from London. Ah, I see. Lord Sutton is also quite inclined towards such news, though it might not come as a surprise. And do you share his interest in such matters? No, not really. I have neither the means to procure such items, nor the opportunity to wear them, but alas, after spending so much time in Lord Sutton's company, I have come to acquire some knowledge about particular fashions. It's not my favorite topic of conversation either, but I do enjoy it from time to time. And a shame to you, dear Elizabeth, there is nothing more wonderful than a lengthy excursion into the realms of fabric and ribbons. Oh, I wonder if we would be able to speak to Miss Peregrine about such things. I believe she has not yet left Darlington, and I suspect she possesses a wealth of knowledge. Without a doubt. Have you not seen the magnificent feathers in her hat? Oh, having tea with her would be so marvelous. If only we could obtain an introduction. Mr. Graham, I think you mentioned that Miss Peregrine is here to visit a relation in the army. Perhaps he could introduce us. I do not know. That is, I'm not certain if... Mr. Graham seems a little lost for words, though the reason is rather unclear. Mr. Graham, I hope you'll forgive us for being so persistent. Not many ladies of Miss Peregrine's tastes and circumstances visit Darlington, so we may have gotten a little carried away. What are you doing, buddy? There is nothing to forgive. I understand the fascination about Miss Peregrine, but I'm afraid I don't share the sentiments. And, well, it is not quite my place to say this, but I would not be so quick to admire Miss Peregrine thus. Oh, please do not think me presumptuous or judgmental. I simply have my reservations, and it would be terrible if Miss Peregrine... No. Yeah, that's supposed to be if Miss Peregrine proved to be a disappointment. You are very kind to be so thoughtful, Mr. Graham, but I don't see how Miss Peregrine could do us any harm. Everything about her is so very elegant. I doubt her heart is anything less than most gentle and kind. Phoebe is quite right. From what we have seen, Miss Peregrine is a picture of perfection. Peregrine, picture of perfection. Dear Mary, perhaps Mr. Graham has a valid point. We have only seen Miss Peregrine for a few moments at most, and that is not nearly enough to know one's character. She's always been so charming on those occasions, I see no reason to have any suspicions. Besides, one cannot sustain such good behavior if it is not true to their nature. However, we have strayed from our original topic. Mr. Graham, we would like to hear about the latest fashion in gentlemen's apparel, if you might still oblige us. Oh yes, please say you will, Mr. Graham. I would love to hear everything you have to say on the subject. Mr. Sutton once told me quite knowingly that all those tedious afternoons when I kept him company during his tailor's visits would one day have its uses. Indeed. What is the name of Lord Sutton's tailor? Is he from London? Does Lord Sutton go to London often to update his wardrobe? Which fabrics does he most prefer? As Mr. Graham begins to answer Mary's questions, you feel that harmony has once again been restored to your party, and Mr. Graham's earlier discomfort has been all but forgotten. This Miss Peregrine thing is really weird. There we go. I really want to read the prompts, or the quotes rather, before I start answering the questions, because that would probably help me figure things out, but like, whatever. Shoot. Okay. Wow, 2 picnics with the Colonel. Okay, there we go. Okay. That is embroidery. Nope, that's wrong. Okay, let's have the picnics. Alright, so Colonel Watson has invited you to join him and some of his friends at a picnic. That sounds lovely. You arrive at the picnic site only to find the entire company already present. The gentlemen rise from their seats to greet you. Colonel Watson, thank you for inviting me today. You are most welcome, Miss Sharp. It is so lovely for you to join us, Miss Sharp, though it is a shame your mother wasn't able to make the trip. Oh, there is something between them. Remember that? That was fun. Oh, the camera's starting to do the thing again. Here we go. Nope. That's better. Oh wait, I already read that. I'm afraid Mama is otherwise occupied today. She sends her apologies and has instructed me to relay today's excursion upon my return. Then I suppose we must give you something interesting enough to relay. Once you're settled on the picnic blanket, the gentlemen also resume their seats. The Colonel gestures for tea and cakes to be served, and you are presented with a rather limited selection. Take a few cakes and thank the footman. Once you have been served, the footman offers tea and cakes to the rest of your company, who each accept their fare with gratitude and without complaint. So, Miss Sharp, Mr. Graham has informed me that you have been working on a project of sorts. Would you kindly share the details with us? I'm embroidering a new set of designs for our cushions. Mama is always pleased by these little decorative changes. How marvelous! I would very much like to see these cushions when they are ready. I often wonder what ladies do with their time. They have no profession and yet are supposedly extraordinarily busy. This man is going to regret the things that he says. That is a rather unfair assessment, Sutton. The ladies in my acquaintance are all so accomplished and are able of feats we men cannot achieve. The ladies in your acquaintance? Or do you simply mean the singular Miss Sharp? Well, no. Or yes. But it matters not. I simply think you are being much too harsh on the fair sex. Not much too harsh. Much too harsh. Oh, but it matters a great deal, for if we are referring to the grand accomplishments of Miss Sharp, then I am certain she can speak for herself. Indeed I can, Lord Sutton. I do not understand from where your vitriol stems, but I assure you, I hardly spend my days gazing into the far distance with an empty mind. And I have become entirely convinced by your heartfelt assurance. I think that's quite enough, gentlemen. Miss Sharp, I hope you'll accept my apologies for the poor conduct of your fellow guests. Well, it is only Sutton who has behaved poorly, and as the only gentleman among us who is not serving a proper cause in the army, he is hardly one to speak. Ha ha! But you forget that my pursuits serve a cultural purpose that is beyond current common comprehension. Wars start and end, but art outlives all. I mean, sure, but what exactly are you doing? And how is art more important? And of course, art provides enough to keep us fed, clothed, and housed. What a wonderful commodity it must be. Oh boy. Mr. Graham is quite right. Your lack of involvement in the war puts you in no position to speak of it. Then I suppose you do not possess that right either. Lord Sutton, I do believe that is enough. I shan't speak for Miss Sharp, but I would certainly like to spend the rest of this picnic in peace. As you wish, Colonel. Miss Sharp, I apologize for my behavior. And I for mine. Although the Colonel attempts to make light conversation, the picnic has become far from salvageable. When it is time to leave, the general sense of relief is quite palpable. Before you go your separate ways, Mr. Graham approaches you with some uncertainty. I am so sorry the day has turned out this way. Sutton is usually such delightful company. I do not know what has gotten into him, but I do apologize for it. Well, at least there will be plenty to tell Mama upon my return. That is certainly something for which to be grateful. You're not to blame for your friend's transgression, Mr. Graham. I hope you will do well to remember that and not take responsibility for the world's misfortunes. That's nice. Thank you, Miss Sharp. You're much wiser than I am. You depart in the same carriage as Colonel Watson, but he is in no mood to make conversation. Soon you have arrived home and leave the unexpectedly eventful day behind you. Man, what a jerk that Sutton guy is. Man, look at my point balance. I am doing so good in this round. The picnic with the Colonel. Oh, maybe this one will be better. It is so wonderful to spend a few hours in the sun. Thank you for inviting us, Colonel Watson. It is a great pleasure to have you and Miss Sharp in our company. For one, I suspect the conversation will be much more palatable to my aging ears. Better than last time. I hope you're not suggesting anything, dear Colonel. You know very well that we boys are always well behaved. Very well behaved, regardless of a lady's presence. I see you've already forgotten the stunt you boys planned just 2 weeks ago. Oh, that was not a stunt, but an experiment. I don't think there's much harm in dabbling in the sciences every now and then. Would you agree with me, Mr. Hammond, Lord Sutton? Absolutely, Mr. Graham. Our experiments might prove to be very useful to our peers. Such scientific experiments may very well change the course of mankind. And you thought the kitchen at Birkenbridge was the best place to carry out such life-changing experiments? Well, we did apologize profusely to the cook, and we did help the kitchen maids clean up. And we did indeed learn that not all substances bode well when presented with a high level of heat. And in all fairness, Colonel, I did suggest we sojourn to my kitchens to carry out the experiments, but apparently a few miles is far too many when one is seized with curiosity. Sometimes I do wonder if you are boys or grown men tasked with defending your country. If I may interject, Colonel Watson, it is of my opinion that men, no matter how much they've grown, will always remain boys at heart. Hear, hear. Surely not all men. Alas, Mrs. Sharp, are you suggesting that I too am merely a boy? I hope you are not offended, dear Colonel, but do think a little on it. Young boys must be clothed, fed, and disciplined when necessary. Do you not have a valet, a cook, and a general to whom you must report? I was wrong to have questioned you then. I concede to your point, good ma'am. Colonel, before you do, please allow me to ask Mrs. Sharp a question to challenge her hypothesis. Oh, go ahead then. I hope you won't mind, Mrs. Sharp. Not at all. I do enjoy stimulating conversations on occasion. Only on occasion, though. You say all men are boys because they are dependent on others, but what of ladies? Are they not similarly clothed and fed by their staff and disciplined by their fathers and perhaps even their husbands? Mr. Graham, although you do have a point, you have failed to consider that not all ladies have such fortunes in life. I can attest that Miss Sharp and I both dress ourselves in the morning and help with the washing and other such chores. I no longer have a living father or husband, and have not been disciplined for quite some time. Left to your own devices without the threat of discipline, that makes 2 of us then, Mrs. Sharp. Shall I remind Lord Sutton of the letter of apology he has yet to write to the cook? Mr. Graham makes a chuckling noise, but stops when Colonel Watson raises an eyebrow. As for Mr. Graham, his penmanship is rather appalling. Ah, yes, Colonel, I commend your efforts in reasserting your authority. I had considered bringing up the matter of your rather sizable collection of miniature soldiers, but I see there's no longer any need. Why, Mrs. Sharp, those are wholly for strategic purposes. Indeed they are, and I can attest to that, Mrs. Sharp. And I have not had the privilege of acquainting myself with military secrets. If you so insist. We do indeed, and so we gentlemen here, as gentlemen, not thoughtless boys, will toast to the continued wisdom and health of Mrs. Sharp. The entire company raises their glasses, and for a moment you think you see a look of amusement and affection pass between Mama and the Colonel. After the small outing is over, your group begins the journey back. Colonel Watson decides on the seating arrangements. You are to ride with Mr. Graham, Mr. Hammond, and Lord Sutton, while the Colonel takes the other small carriage with Mama. Ever so gracious, Mr. Graham extends a hand and helps you into the carriage. He seats himself next to you, while Mr. Hammond and Lord Sutton take the opposite seats. The ride is a little bumpy and not entirely pleasant, but you focus on your company. I must say, Miss Sharp, your mother is quite a force to be reckoned with. Sometimes I do feel like a little boy when in her presence. I confess I am rather surprised too. Mama is not generally so perceptive, at least not to my knowledge. Mama is quite, well, she is Mama. And sometimes that is all that needs to be said. But surely there are drawbacks to the image Mrs. Sharp has painted of her existence. It is commendable, of course, but it is also quite lacking. How do you mean? I have much respect for someone who knows how to prepare meals and mend clothing. Goodness knows how invaluable I find my own staff, but is there not something more? What of sharpening one's mind and refining one's sense of beauty? Is there not something to be said for intellectual and artistic pursuits? This guy again, oh my goodness. I understand what you're saying, Lord Sutton, but some of us are simply not fortunate enough to have the means for such indulgences. Exactly. Miss Sharp has quite the point there. It must be difficult to be a gentleman's daughter in certain circumstances. That's right. That I'm quite glad I'm not one. You freaking... I shall evermore be struck with images of you in gowns and gloves, Lord Sutton. LOL. LOL, if our places were exchanged, I wager you would not be able to survive a day in my position, while I would succeed in yours. Ha ha ha! Alas, whether you wish it or not, it is not your say, just as it is not any of ours. Let's be challenging. Oh, do you mean to say you are familiar with the accounts and numbers required for a smooth running of all the leases on my property? I must say my preference lies between what both Lord Sutton and Miss Sharp have suggested. I find the thought of a hard-working life with enough time for leisure quite appealing. Not appalling. Appealing. Quite appealing. Ah, yes, the golden rule of the mean. I certainly agree with you there, Mr. Hammond, and I think there is much to be admired in both Lord Sutton and Miss Sharp. Lord Sutton, you are without parallel in the artistic pursuits, but not all practical undertakings are carried out without spirit. And I find a great deal of fulfillment in hard work, as do many others I know. And ladies of moderate means are no exception. Mr. Graham gives you a meaningful look. Thank you. Quite right. Lord Sutton concedes his defeat and remains rather quiet for the rest of the journey back. Mr. Graham, however, is quite the opposite and remains in high spirits. He's just the cutest. Points, points, points. They're all about the embroidery. Okay, an artistic outing. Mr. Graham has invited you to join him and his friends to view a private art collection. Wow, that's cool. There was also something else. Oh, yes, he calls on you. Let's do that one first. I'm more curious about that one. Miss Sharp, I hope you have been well. I'm still recovering from Lord Sutton's insults since our last encounter, but apart from that, I'm quite well. How can one not be well when such a lovely gentleman is called? You do me too much credit, Miss Sharp. If you don't mind me being a little forward, I was wondering if I may remain in your company today as you continue with your embroidery? What a marvelous timing you have. I was thinking about practicing my needlework just before your arrival, and it would be a pleasure to do so in your company. The pleasure is all mine, Miss Sharp. While you prepare your tools, Mr. Graham makes himself comfortable and withdraws a book from his pocket. You glimpse the title as none other than Mr. Thomas Paine's Rights of Man. Oh, you are reading Mr. Paine. I am only reading it to broaden my mind. My support lies entirely with the very person whom Mr. Paine attacks. I agree entirely with Mr. Burke's assessment on the importance of tradition, and I am not much convinced by Mr. Paine's reputations. There is much to be valued about one's history and backgrounds, and I do think it plays quite a large role in determining one's future. I speak not as a philosopher, but as a soldier. I understand my standing in England and my commitment to my country, and I'm comforted by the knowledge. We are in agreement, Mr. Graham. I'm glad of it. Oh dear, it appears that I have become the very distraction I had hoped not to be. Perhaps it would be prudent to carry on with our respective tasks. You and Mr. Graham spend several hours in each other's company, while you expand your stitches and Mr. Graham his mind. When Mr. Graham finally takes his leave, he has progressed through a significant portion of his book, and you have almost finished your embroidery. There we go. Wow, I got a lot of points from that. Man, I'm doing so good. What's up, girl? Okay. Written by men. Got it. Okay. Alright. Let's do deep purple. You got it from capturing an enemy ship. It was Queen Louise of Prussia, that's right. Okay, let's do this one. Alright, let's go view the art collection. Dear Miss Sharp, I hope this letter finds you well. I write to you with some reluctance, and perhaps a fair deal of embarrassment. What? As you may be aware, Lord Sutton is quite fond of both producing and looking at paintings, and he has somehow managed to convince me to join him in the viewing of a supposedly rare and astounding collection belonging to one of his friends, Mr. Powell. I fear I will spend the day in torment, and I would be very much obliged if you are willing to join me on the occasion. Ooh, a date. Yours, James Graham. Yes, James, anything. Mr. Graham, Lord Sutton, and Mr. Hammond greet you upon your arrival. Mr. Graham's countenance brightens when he sees you. I'm so pleased you're joining us today, Miss Sharp. Sutton has assured me we will be in the presence of some of the most exquisite art known to man. Oh boy. And I will be fortunate enough to be in the presence of a lovely gentleman such as yourself, Mr. Graham. I love complimenting him. He's so sweet. You flatter me, Miss Sharp. Miss Sharp, it is good to see you. I love Mr. Hammond and his hair. Yes, yes, it is good to see you too. Now, enough with the tedious pleasantries. Shall we venture inside? Of course, thank you also for the invitation, Lord Sutton. Ah, your good manners are much appreciated. Ah, my gentle friends, there is so much fine art to appreciate. Let us head inside and do just that. Yes, sir. Right this way, then. Points! Hi! Ah, I pushed F. You were not helpful there. You were not helpful. Are you cute, though? Wow, look at this room. You enter the manor and are given a warm welcome by the housekeeper. You watch Lord Sutton as he interacts with the housekeeper. Although he remains polite, his arrogance is equally tangible. You learn that the venerable Mr. Powell has business elsewhere and is unable to personally receive your company. However, you are most welcome to peruse his collection at your heart's desire, after which refreshments will be served. You enter a large room with walls full of paintings, and with not much else inside. Regardless of your personal feelings about Sutton, you cannot deny that he is a man with rather enviable connections. Goodness, Sutton, you were certainly right about the sheer size of your friend's collection. I am quite impressed. Have I ever deceived you, Graham? Oh, I see a painting I would like to examine further. I hope you will excuse me, Miss Sharp, gentlemen. Well, I suppose let's just start from one end of the room and work our way from there, then. Yes, let's do Mr. Graham. I do wonder what Mr. Hammond wanted to see, but also I'm really trying with Mr. Graham. So, you follow Mr. Graham as he begins perusing the paintings, and you soon begin to notice a pattern. He would politely spend a moment or two to look at each of the works displayed before moving on. Every now and then he might make a small comment or nod in appreciation, but you suspect he is only mildly interested in what he sees. As you approach a painting on the far side of the wall, you sense a difference in Mr. Graham's demeanor. You notice that he has not made any sounds and is remaining quite still. You glance up to see what has caught his attention, and you find yourself looking at a rather large canvas depicting men on the battlefields. The details are exquisite, and you can see every crease in the soldiers' uniforms and every ripple of their horses' muscles. This is quite extraordinary. Mr. Graham appears to be startled by your words, but upon registering their meaning, he smiles at you softly. That's it? Okay. When you have finished viewing the paintings, you gather in one of the reception rooms and take a moment to enjoy refreshments. So, Mr. Graham, Mr. Hammond, not as tedious as you expected, I hope? Not at all. There is something so lovely about drawings of quietness and contentment. And you, Graham, seem to be similarly enraptured by one of the paintings. Yes, I was, and you are correct on all accounts. You reminded me why I continue to choose your company, despite all your shortcomings. Oh, but my only shortcoming is that I am lacking in them. Oh my gosh. Sorry, kitty. Please don't put your claws in my leg. The gentlemen appear to be in good spirits for the rest of the day, and are more than gracious when they see to it that you arrive home in time for tea. How kind of them. Wow, doing so freaking good. Alright, town ball. You and Mama have been invited to another ball, and the Colonel is hosting at the assembly rooms. Yes, let's go. When you and Mama arrive at the assembly rooms, you find most of the regiment already in attendance. Unlike many other balls you've attended, you're quite certain there shan't be a shortage of gentlemen as dancing partners. Upon noticing your arrival, Colonel Watson excuses himself from his present company and makes his way towards you. Ah, Mrs. Sharp, Miss Sharp. Oh, goodness, kitty. Kitty. Stay here, thank you. He was about to fall off of my lap and probably take lots of my skin with it. Ah, Miss Sharp, Mrs. Sharp, Miss Sharp, you are both looking splendid. Now that you're here, the ball shall begin in earnest. Oh, Colonel, do not jest. From what I can see, the ball has been underway for quite some time. Perhaps I should be a little more specific then. Now that you're here, Mrs. Sharp, I might finally hazard writing my name on a dancing card. Oh. Okay. Oh, she's exceptionally pleased. That's so cute. Is that so? Oh, how I do love to dance, but I think my dancing days might be behind me. If you enjoy something so much, then please indulge me by joining me for just one dance. I confess I'm not inclined to do any more than that, but surely we could both participate in just the one. Well, you are being quite an obliging host tonight, so I suppose I will give my consent. Most excellent. I am afraid I've neglected you, Miss Sharp. I would ask for a dance with you also, but I don't think I'll be able to handle much more than one with your mama. These people are probably, like, in their 50s and are acting like they are, like, in their 80s. Oh, please do not concern yourself, Colonel Watson. I'm sure there are many other gentlemen who are all eager to dance. So long as you dance with Mama, I will be quite content. She does love to go through the steps at home, but as you can imagine, doesn't come across much opportunity to participate in a proper dance. Dear Colonel, you are much too kind. I am so grateful you have decided to hold this ball and invited all the lovely gentlemen in your regiment. I shall happily dance the night away with my new friends. You are a wonderful young lady, Miss Sharp. I do hope you'll find much merriment here tonight. Some more guests have arrived, and aware of his duties, the Colonel excuses himself to greet them. Meanwhile, Mama informs you that she will join some of her friends and leaves you to find yours. As she walks away, you see that she is still wearing a happy flush. Oh, they're so cute! Okay. Ooh! Okay, so there's nothing more with them. Let's talk to Mr. Graham. There you are, Miss Sharp. I was so focused on trying to find you amongst the Colonel's guests that I somehow missed you entirely. Alright, let's see. I have not been in your presence for more than half a minute, and already your endearing demeanor has lifted my spirits. There's so many people here, it's not unsurprising you do not see me. Okay, I did not know I had such an effect on you. I hereby recommend that, for the sake of your general health and well-being, you shall hereafter spend much more time in my company. I'm down with that. Oh, I see they are forming groups for the long ways. Miss Sharp, might I have the honor and pleasure of this first dance? Oh, yes, absolutely. I've been looking forward to dancing with you for some time. Visibly pleased, Mr. Graham takes your gloved hand in his and leads you to the line where the other pairs are gathered. You see Mama at the top of the line as the leading lady. Whoa, go Mama! Before the music begins, Mr. Graham follows your gaze and then gives you a knowing look. I don't think I've ever seen the Colonel so very pleased, and mind you, I've observed him for a great many years. The Sharp ladies are extraordinary indeed. Before you can reply, the music has started, and Mama is calling out the steps. She has done this so often in your practice sessions with Mary, Phoebe, and your other friends, but it is altogether different in such a public setting. Your Mama, however, is not at all fazed, and proudly bears her position of honor. You move through the steps easily, and see that Mr. Graham is similarly adept, though he is perhaps a tad too enthusiastic. Why, Mr. Graham, you are quite the seasoned dancer. Oh, no, not at all, but I do enjoy it so. The current couple at the top of the line are about to make their way to the bottom, and you pause in your steps to clap to the music as they do so. All your fellow dancers do the same, and the combined sound nicely accompanies the cheerful atmosphere. However, you realize with the start that there is one person who feels quite differently. It is Lord Sutton, who has joined the lines without you noticing, and who has now fixed his intense gaze on you. Jeez. Wow. That is art right there. Wow. You are so surprised by the unexpected sight that you find it a little difficult to look away. When you finally do so, you are met with Mr. Graham's cheerful countenance, as light as his friend's is dark. Mr. Graham, however, does not seem to have noticed your reaction, and instead continues to dance as jovially as ever. There's not much to be said or done about the decidedly strange exchange between you and Lord Sutton. Returning to your present company, you and Mr. Graham dance the rest of the long ways while you try to ignore the uneasiness from earlier. By the time the dance is finally finished, more than an hour later, you were too tired and thirsty to do more than follow Mr. Graham toward the refreshments. That dance took an hour? What is this word? There we go. Okay then. Okay, well, we have done quite a lot. Is this sharp? Yes. Awesome. Okay, we have done quite a lot in this particular game, so I think that's a good place to stop and take a break for next week. So, what do you guys think of Mr. Graham? I just love Mr. Graham. I think he's so sweet, cute, and fun. And obviously there's something going on with this Miss Peregrine. I don't know what the deal is there yet, obviously, in this game. So I'm sure something will happen there. And then Lord Sutton, who just has it out for us for some reason. So, very fun. Thank you all for joining me, and I will see you next week. So, let me get ready. Oh, goodbye.